Raul Tejada is one of my favorite companions in New Vegas. Not only does he have one of the most heart-wrenching backstories, but he also has some of the most in-depth lore of all the characters in the Fallout series. And that's why we're covering Raul the Ghoul in the first episode of Fallout Characters.
I'm an open book, boss. Granted, the book's in Spanish and some of the pages have fallen out, but I'm an open book.
Now, a lot of this information can be learned from Raul as you two travel the wasteland. But if you're not like me and you haven't meticulously played through each companion quest line, then this video should give you some insight and a better understanding of these characters. With that said, let's get right into it. Raul Tejada was born in 2047, spending the majority of his youth, which is a lot longer than you'd think given the whole ghoul and living 200 plus years, but for the majority of his human youth, he spent his time living at the Hidalgo ranch just outside Mexico City. Having a knack for mechanic work and being a good shot, Raul found himself in trouble with the law more than a few times. However, his family did their best to keep him on a good path. During the Great War, Mexico City was turned into a crater, as described by Raul himself. Leaving the inhabitants nowhere to stay, they all fled Mexico City, and many made their way to Hidalgo Ranch. As it was far enough away from the city ruins, it was relatively unscathed during the war. However, due to the constant flow of refugees from the city, the Tejadas eventually had to turn people away as they started to run low on space and food to accommodate those they had taken in. Eventually, the ranch's inhabitants started to turn violent towards Raul and his family, leading Raul and his father to drive out the refugees with their guns. However, this proved to be the ranch's downfall, as later that same night, around 24 of the refugees returned after the Tejadas had gone to sleep, blocking the family inside and setting the home on fire. Raul and his sister managed to escape through a window. However, Raul was pretty badly burned, and the rest of the 7 other family members perished in the flames. Raul and his sister Rafaela ran from their home and were pursued by their attackers. However, Raul was able to take out those who followed them, but did not return to the ranch as he didn't want to risk Rafaela's safety for mere revenge. Raul and Rafaela made their way to Mexico City against Rafaela's better judgment, as the two couldn't return to the ranch because the refugees that attacked them put a bounty out for them. Though Mexico City wasn't hit directly, and not nearly as bad as DC or Bakersfield, it was still turned into a radioactive ruin. Raul was determined to make it to the city in search of help. However, neither of the two were aware of the invisible danger that had blanketed the city: heavy radiation. Those who chose not to leave the city were surviving by scavenging what they could find from the ruins and forming what would later become the first raider tribes of Mexico City. This led Raul and Rafaela to do the same, scavenging any food they could find and medical supplies to tend to Raul's burns. This is where and when Raul believes he began the ghoulification process. It was here in the ruins of Mexico City that Raul donned his vaquero outfit. He stumbled across the iconic getup while scavenging for bandages in the nearby ruins. The outfit was untouched by the devastation outside, and once Raul saw it, he knew he had to take it. Wearing the outfit back to their camp, the moment Rafaela laid her eyes on it, she laughed for the first time since the bombs had fallen. It was due to her reaction that Raul chose to continue to wear the outfit, even though it drew a lot of unwanted attention. With this newly donned outfit and his innate ability to use a gun, Raul soon became feared in the ruins and became known as the Ghost of Mexico City. Though his persona often got him and Rafaela out of trouble, it also tended to bring trouble to their doorstep in the form of those who pursued the fame of being the one to put an end to the Ghost of Mexico City. As soon as Raul would see a light at the end of this dark tunnel, things would take a drastic and devastating turn for the worst. Raul became increasingly ill as the exposure to the radiation in the ruins set in. This sickness was the last few days he had before becoming a ghoul, causing Raul to be too weak to go with Rafaela to scavenge, leaving her to provide for both of them. It was during this time that Rafaela traveled to a nearby market area to scavenge for food. However, she failed to return home, and eventually Raul made his way out into the ruined city to search for his sister. Though what he found was his worst nightmare. He found Rafaela dead, murdered by raiders in the streets. Though he was weak, Raul set out for vengeance and tracked down the raider gang that mutilated his sister, leaving not a single soul alive. Leaving the ruins of Mexico City behind, Raul wandered to the Gulf Coast and took up shelter in an uninhabited Petro Chico refinery, spending a long period of his life here, donning his familiar jumpsuit and thinking about his life so far. After a time, Raul set out into the wasteland once again. He eventually made his way to Tucson, Arizona, now known as Tucson, settling here and becoming a local mechanic and general handyman. It was here Raul stayed for 75 years and eventually met Claudia, a local escort that looked almost identical to Rafaela. Her appearance brought back memories long buried, and Raul sought to look after Claudia from a distance, never making contact. Tucson was peaceful for a time, however, like all things, these good times did not last. Arizona had soon become overrun with raider gangs and tribals, causing the region as a whole to become a dangerous place. But none were more dangerous than Dirty Dave and his 6 brothers, who rolled into Tucson looking for ammunition. Raul, being the man he is now, sold them what he had in the hopes that once they had what they were looking for, they would be on their way. Dirty Dave and his band of brothers traveled to the nearby adult entertainment. They killed 4 of the workers and then kidnapped Claudia and then left town. Once Raul heard the news, he trekked out into the desert after Dirty Dave. It took Raul 3 days in the wasteland to find Dirty Dave and his camp. However, by that time, Claudia was already dead, which caused Raul to go into a rage, charging into the camp, guns blazing. However, Raul was not the young man that he used to be. He did manage to take down Dirty Dave and his 6 brothers single-handedly, though in the process he took his fair share of shots. Wounded and crushed, and witnessing what to him appeared to be his sister murdered yet again, Raul stayed at the camp, defeated, until he regained enough strength to trek back to Tucson. Once fully recovered, Raul left Tucson, as new memories haunted him along with his old ones. He headed west, eventually arriving in the Mojave Wasteland and setting up a small shack in an isolated corner outside New Vegas, spending his day listening to Black Mountain Radio. That was until the broadcast abruptly stopped, and he made a trek to Black Mountain. This is where his path crosses with yours, the courier. His fate was then changed for better or worse.
My name is Raul Alfonso Tejada. Can I leave now? Or did you want to ask me again in 5 minutes?